Well, Vancouver is a safe city for female tourists. That is, according to the website Travel Safe Abroad. And that site goes on to add that women should be watchful at night if they happen to be alone. I'm sure this could be said of nearly every city on the planet, but Vancouver wanted to do better. And so that's why, back in 2018, the city released a City for All Women Women's Equity Strategy 2018 to 2028. And they set this safety objective. It read, by 2025, women's sense of safety will be increased by at least 10%. Well, here we are in 2025, and Lisa Christiansen is here to tell us how that's going. Hello.
Good morning.
First off, just what got you looking at Vancouver Council reports from 2018?
Yeah, so this was just after an attack on May 20th in Stanley Park. Some people might remember this. Around 11 a.m., police were called to a women's changing room. Someone saw a suspicious man enter the room near Second Beach. A woman was found to have been robbed and violently assaulted. They were able to catch a suspect nearby. He was charged with 5 criminal offenses. All of this at a city facility at 11 in the morning.
And you had some questions, obviously.
I did. I wanted to know and see how the City of Vancouver has addressed women's safety over the years. But let's first go back to 2016. That's when former Vancouver City Councillor Andrea Reimer proposed a motion. The title, Because It's 2016, Action on Gender Equality. You might recall then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's answer to why his cabinet was gender balanced because it's 2015, he answered. So a lot of women like Councillor Reimer thought it might be a good time to propose something bold. So she proposed a motion to update the city's existing 2005 gender equity strategy. And that's the motion that resulted in a City for All Women, Women's Equity Strategy 2018 to 2028. The strategy that set out to make women feel safer by 10% by 2025. And I asked Andrea about it.
So the challenge of making this policy, as you say, like it sounds kind of ridiculous, and 10 is obviously not a scientific, well, it would surprise me if it was a scientifically rigorous number. Like, it's just like, let's choose a number that we think we can do and use it to drive the systems change that needs to happen to have some impact here. I think in my time in government, I really learned that, ideally, like climate's a good example where there is rigorous science on it, and you can that you can set a target at this and here's the actions you need to take to do it. In this area, no, again, women are so systemically discriminated against that there's no big body of research out there that's like, here are the actions you have to take to make women safer, and here's how you do it. Some of them are sort of common sense, but the systemic level of discrimination means that it's a lot more complicated than you think.
And that's former Vancouver City Councillor Andrea Reimer discussing her motion in 2016 and that 10% goal.
Well, right. And she points out just how much has changed since the optimistic because it's 2016 time.
Yeah, it's true. That original 2005 gender equity strategy was written in the wake of serial killer Robert Pickton. He was first charged with murder in February of 2002. So by 2018, when this strategy I'm looking at came out of the City of Vancouver, it had been aware of the challenges to women's safety for a long time.
And so what did they do about it then?
So in the 2018 report, as well as calling for the 10% safety increase for women, there were also several actions related to the downtown east side. For example, continue to engage with Indigenous communities and review and identify opportunities to integrate within the city, taking recommendations from Reclaiming Power and Place, the final report of the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, and Red Women Rising, Indigenous Women Survivors in Vancouver's downtown east side.
Okay.
And I'm guessing, how did that all go?
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I asked Alice Kendall, she's the executive director of the Downtown East Side Women's Center, if women in that neighborhood were feeling 10% safer.
I don't know what it relates to. I don't know the justification of this number. We know that the report just came from the province around gender-based violence being an epidemic. So I don't know on what basis they've got this 10% safer. What does that mean? We know that the women, I'm only going to speak for the downtown east side, but we know that women in the downtown east side are in no way safer by 10% than they were in 2018, and that we know that the issues remain the same, if not worse. When we have things like a housing crisis, which we have, and a poison drug supply, which we have, we know that women are the ones that are going to be feel the consequences of those kind of crises, and that's what we see.
And that's Ellis Kendall, Executive Director of the Downtown Eastside Women's Centre. I will say that one of the areas that was in the strategy was to have a 24-hour drop-in for women in the sex workers in the area. So the Wish Drop-In Centre extended its hours in 2020, but then in February of this year, it closed, and I don't know if it has reopened. I don't think it has, though.
All right. And again, I mean, it does feel like it's impossible to measure, whether you've hit 10% or not 10%. But here we are in 2025. Any progress on that objective of I guess, just making the city at all safer?
Well, yeah, exactly. So really what we're also talking about is this report, that just seems to kind of linger. So in March of 2021, there was a report to council from the city's first and now former chief equity officer, Aftab Irfan. In the report, the 10% safer goal is still the objective, as is the development of a sex worker safety plan with focus on long-term goals and planning with internal departments and external partners. On that last part, I did receive a statement from the city's communication department that said there has been progress on a draft sex worker safety plan. However, work is currently delayed.
Well, right. And so then how do women's safety advocates feel about the progress on the goal of being more safe?
Yeah, so back in 2016, the city was instructed to work with the Women's Advisory Committee. That committee's mandate is to advise council and staff on enhancing access and inclusion for women and girls. And this is done by this committee in an advisory role. They are not employees of the city. So I reached out to the co-chair of the Women's Advisory Committee, that is Alida Ogengham Thomas.
The last time that an update went to council about the status of the women's equity strategy was 2021, which you will know predates this current council. So we have yet to hear a report from city staff or from city council on the status of the women's equity strategy under this council. We've made that request. We've been told it's coming this summer or this fall, but that's where that's at. So we don't know the actual status of it. We have also inquired repeatedly about the status of the UN Women Safe City initiative to see, is there a person who's currently working in that role? Is it currently being funded? Is that report been completed? If so, is it publicly available? We haven't yet received that information either.
So Alida also mentioned the UN Safe Cities and Safe Public Spaces initiative, which was mentioned in the 2008 report. Part of that initiative is that a study needed to be conducted in Vancouver. And so according to a statement from the City of Vancouver's Communications Department, they noted this study was a key action and added from September 21 to January 2022, the city ran a public survey to inquire into experiences of gender-based violence and received over 1,000 responses. It does not say where the results of this survey can be found or what they did about them.
Okay. And so then back to the 10%. Did the Women's Advisory Committee have thoughts on that?
Alida sure did.
I think my question is, how do you measure something like that? That's a very kind of arbitrary indicator unless you have really clear data. I don't know how we would be hearing from women and gender diverse folks in the city to articulate, are you feeling safer, and what does 10% safer mean? Is that 10% of citizens feel safe, or that citizens feel markedly safer? I don't know I think our committee in general doesn't know if that's a particularly helpful indicator. We're just more looking for a reduction in known instances of harm, but that hasn't been talked about specifically on our version of the advisory committee because we haven't gotten a report back on those metrics.
And so, Lisa, where does this leave women when it comes to the equity report and their sense of safety now in 2025?
Exactly. I asked the City of Vancouver that question and received this response. Based on available survey data from various sources, women's reported sense of safety in Vancouver may have declined slightly in the past 10 years. Alita also mentioned that back in November of 2024, the committee passed a motion that recommended the City of Vancouver declare gender-based violence, intimate partner violence, and family violence an epidemic in Vancouver. This would trigger public health and safety obligations. She said she did not hear back from any city councillors.
And this is something that is so, in the news right now. I mean, we've had, 3 very serious, incidents of intimate partner violence. And this is something that's top of mind right now. And it's interesting that it's not getting more attention at City Council.
Stephen, I think we can say that just about any time, which is why the study goes back to 2005 and many variations, because we discuss this topic a lot. So, although the city went to the trouble of making the goal of women feeling 10% safer by 2025, it hasn't been very successful so far. I asked 2 people working on the report to speak to me about it, and they declined. I also tried to talk to the current gender equity officer, was not able to speak to her as well. I did ask the City of Vancouver about it, and I've been including some of their responses throughout this story. But in summary, there are a lot of big ideas that still need attention. I was directed toward a press release for Good Night Out launching its last call audit to champion safer and more inclusive hospitality across Vancouver. I then read that this is free and voluntary program.
Did you expect that you would get as stymied as you were along the way here? Simply asking questions.
No, I didn't. I just thought if you make an objective for 10% and you set that goal, then at the very least you should be able to, point out where more lights or more whatever or something.
Yeah.
And so I do think that, there is definitely more work that needs to be done. And on the whole study, which also looked at childcare and poverty and other things like that.
Okay. And I guess in the end, it all depends on how women are feeling.
Exactly.
And so you talked to some women on the streets?
Yes. So we're going to give women the last word. Some of our colleagues here went out yesterday and asked women if they feel safer these days. And here's what they had to say.
Not exactly. I feel like the risk is higher. Women get attacked during the night, and I generally feel like I should be more aware of my surroundings.
I started to encounter people randomly, yelling at me.
The stares, you can feel that someone is staring at you. That feels you really uncomfortable.
I I actually want to complain, but I don't know how.
I don't really see any improvement. I think it's just staying as usual. Yeah.
A lot of homeless women on the streets too. I would definitely feel much relieved seeing that they're in a good place every night.
Downtown Vancouver, I would say I still feel a little iffy about it. But everything else, I walk late at night.
I get to wear shorts or a tank top or something like that. I feel definitely more secure than I felt 3 years ago.
I'll feel safer in general, but if it's at night, I won't be walking home on a dark street or something empty street. Yeah.
And those are the voices of some women in downtown Vancouver talking about how safe they feel. And thanks very much to Lisa Christiansen for that story.